I had thought about becoming a lawyer when I was very young, and really I could not have been happier with what I've chosen to do. I found that I did have the ability to tell people's stories, particularly once I became a prosecutor, because you're telling the story of a victim, you're telling the story of injustice, and you're showing people that there are steps that can be taken to right that injustice. So I found that not only was I able to tell the story, I was also able to contribute to the story. Durham is my home. It's the place where I grew up. It's the place where I sort of explored who I was and what I wanted to be. And you always look back on the place where you grew up, hopefully, with fond and happy memories. And I do think that my parents went to a lot of pains to shield me from a lot of the things that were going on at the time. You know, I was a senior in high school, and I remember some of the guidance counselors and one teacher called myself and two other students into an office, and we were told this long, involved story about the school's effort to pick a valedictorian and how they weren't able to determine who had the highest grades. We really sat there and thought, this is the oddest thing that we've heard in quite some time. I learned later that some of the black educators went to my dad and said to him, you know, what's happening is that on the basis of her record, Loretta should be the valedictorian, but the school does not want to give her that achievement. So there was a constant effort on the part of people to diminish my achievements. But I think having had the family that I had, making sure that my brothers and I always reached for the best that we could be and knew that we were the equal of anyone else, I felt I had the tools to move through that. I went to a Wall Street firm right out of law school, and I enjoyed my law firm. But one night I remember I had just been working around the clock, and I literally collapsed at my desk. Fortunately, there was a secretary working with me. She got me to the hospital. So I spent the weekend, you know, looking at an IV and thinking a lot about what did I want to do with my talents, with the heritage that my family had given to me of work and service. And I decided to make that shift and go into public service. The Attorney General of the United States is the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States. So I've spent a lot of time with the best of law enforcement, but I've also had to confront the times when law enforcement has not lived up to the best that it can be. Whenever you have a difficult case, one of the things that you have to focus on is doing an impartial and independent and fair investigation, because everyone is impacted by these cases. You have victims. You've got an officer whose life and career is in limbo. Your goal is to make sure that everyone feels that no matter what the result, they were treated fairly throughout the process. I need them to know that they were heard, particularly when it comes to minorities in this country and their connection to law enforcement. We have a history where the black voice has not been heard, has not been valued. And one of the things I was proudest of as Attorney General was the work I did around the country, talking to law enforcement and communities who were working together on these very, very hard issues. At the end of the day, everyone wants to go home safely. To do that, you have to have a system that holds people accountable. I went down to Fayetteville, North Carolina, when I was the Attorney General, and looked at how they had interacted with the community in starting their body camera program and how they had opened up their training and opened up a lot of their information for community input, and they took the input and used it in making their policies. North Carolina has struggled with its history, but it's made great strides. Our path to equality in this country has never been straight. It has never been smooth, it's never been even, but when we focus on uplifting the best of this country, we have made tremendous strides.